So we've been receiving some questions on Slido, but I think one which came through and got the most votes so far is one I'd also like to pose, which is to Mr. Morished, and it is, how do you identify that excessive manpower exists? How do you identify that there is excessive manpower, that you need to cut headcount? Could you activate the microphone there?
Oh, that's an easy one. You don't, of course, wake up in the morning and you say, oh, I have 30% access. You really do a study, normally with a consultant, and look at all the jobs, like the layers I showed you, from the chief executive all the way to the operator in the plant. And you look at your best in class, or average, actually. We took the average of the industry. In a TiO2, we looked at the TiO2 space. In the chemical, we looked at the chemical space. And the downstream also, we looked at that space. And then the consultant will help you. This is what I'm talking about the consultant. They're very good at getting information, gathering information, analyzing. And then you look at it and you look at yourself and you say, okay, I have here, I have here. It also helps, people who, like myself, who worked a number of years, done a lot of restructuring before. A cracker is a cracker. It doesn't matter if it's operated by Shell or Exxon or Sabic or Tosniya. It is a cracker. And if 42 operator with 4 shifts or less can operate it in, outside Frankfurt, Germany, or Houston, Texas, why not in Jubail? There are a lot of basic things, but I clearly, you're going to need some help from consulting to give you really the best, or at least the average of today's world. You cannot take your experience of long time ago and apply it right away, because things normally have improved.
The questioner particularly asked if you could address Yambu as an example of how you decided what degree of manpower you needed to.
Well, Yambu is nothing but a TiO2 plant. It's just there are so many of them around the world. And we sat with consultant and looked with some of the people we know in the industry and looked at our numbers. And let me tell you, maybe some people, we Saudis don't like to talk about it. And sometimes some companies get into this nepotism, hiring your cousins and friends and uncles and what have you. And when you look at some organization, you don't need to be a genius to find the same last name, either tribes or families or something. And you realize that the hiring somehow went wrong. So this is really what happens, sadly. And it does happen. I'm not saying it happens in Yambu only. It could happen in anywhere in the world. And that's just an example where things a little bit went out of whack, and it has to be brought back into whack. That's all it is.
Okay. Daniele,
yes.
I was very interested in the curve you showed, the qualitative curve of effectively of morale. Should that be a smooth curve? Do you aim to smooth it out, or do you accept that it's all troughs and peaks?
Well, I guess it's the challenge of the leaders that are managing these turnarounds to smooth it and to make it less dramatic, So you should have had another slide where if you are effective in using and mixing your leadership style, the curve will become more smooth. But for the saving of the number of slides, I didn't put it on. I stayed in the 20 minutes, by the way. So
yes, you did.
I think it was it's an important concept. I learned it in another situation, in the surfactant business in the past. I think you go around the site, you talk about your vision, and then you come down to say, okay, we are now closing one unit, or maybe we are now restructuring that. And definitely the morale will go down, because you're starting to install worry and concern, and even people that are not involved in that unit will start thinking about their future. So it's very important there you become more affiliative, you become more clear, coaching, but then when you have to do it, you need to be authoritative and directive. So it's a careful mix, and it's a tough job for all the team.
Yeah. And I wonder if you'd both like to make some comments about speed of action and getting the worst over with quickly. So,
okay.
So, Mr. Morished,
sure.
At Tasneh, for example.
Sure. I just want to comment on the morale, because that's one thing I really forgot. I also love it when people say, oh my God, the morale is down in the company. I said, well, wake up and smell the roses. You're going to fire people and you're going to somebody sit in the chair, he lost his friends or whatever, next things, and you want them to be smiling and dancing? You're out of your mind. So the morale is going to go down, you like it or not. But the trick is, you watch it and don't keep it going down all the time. The trick, and that's where the speed comes in. I always say, speed of action is very, very more important than perfection of design. I don't like people who go into analysis paralysis. You can analyze the damn thing to death, but if you don't move and make action, morale will continue down and the business will go down. So believe me, you should accept and you say, okay, you know, I really honestly have one of our PR guys come in and almost cry and say, my God, we're destroying the culture of the company, morale is down. I said, come on, no company, in my experience, go through restructuring and singing and dancing and morale is up. Morale is gonna go down for a while. But the trick, by the speed of action here comes in, get the pain over with. It's like, you know, a surgery. Get it over with and move on. And that's the name of the game.
Yes, I agree completely with Al-Murashid. I definitely say that I would have done it much faster than the time I was showing to you. Two elements for us. One, the colossal movement we had to do in terms of decades of inertia in that business and the deepness of the trouble. Second, the permitting and the relationship with the stakeholders. Our assets are in highly unionized areas, as you may imagine. So we had to close assets in highly unemployment areas of Italy, in south of Italy. And so these kind of things obviously takes also a human touch and a normal relationship with the stakeholders. But in another situation, I would have shortened the time. I agree with you. Make the job, turn the page, start on again.
And just to add complexity, you also changed the name of the company.
Yes.
Which must have been a massive undertaking. Did that raise morale, or
Oh, definitely. Yes, definitely.
But at the same time, it made you less transparent to your customers because they had to learn who you were.
We had to do a lot of work on that, and the communication was really addressing that. And for the first 6 months, we really had to go into strategic communication, which is something that many companies are doing at the moment. But it was impossible to maintain a name like that when you want to do such an amount of changes. I mean, our company was here in the Gulf in the 90s, was in Asia. They were all over the world when they were called Anychem. And then suddenly, somebody decided, when everybody stayed around the world and stayed around the area of growth and stranded hydrocarbons, somebody decided it was the time to retreat in Europe and in some line of products. So I don't criticize, maybe that was the time for doing, but certainly not good for today.
There was an interesting question up here about family-held large corporations. Are the dynamics any different in that, Mr. Morishid?
Not really. It's more, of course, in the Western culture, there is a lot of things. In Saudi, it's mainly trying to help people. Like in Yamba, for example, we actually hired a placement company to find job for those people who were surplus with mixed success. So my advice for people who are going through that, which we have not done in my Sabic days, we didn't do that, which I think now in hindsight, maybe, you know, life changes. Whatever today wasn't there 5 years ago, because people always say, oh, you should have done it 5 years ago. But we always learn something. We always improve. If we know what we know today, we would have changed things way back then. So, yeah, we done that in an overseas sites. We done hiring, helping and rehiring in the Saudi sites.
Yeah. Daniela,
Similar to us, we have tried to use highly integrated in terms of utilities and chemical facilities sites to be use them to accept new process or new chemistry. So the Matrica was a classic one. The joint venture we made in Sardinia enabled us to close a large, unused and obsolete petrochemical unit, cracker, polyethylene, phenol, and just shut down the entire site and replace it with a new green chemical biorefinery that is integrated with the territory and uses the raw material from the agricultural fields in the territory, in the region. This helps because it creates a bridge between unemployment and re-employment, but it's a big challenge because you need to train the people and evolve their mind into a different process or a different kind of chemistry. And that's another challenge.
But when you looked at that, were you driven by employment considerations or by the market that was evolving for the renewable material?
We definitely wanted to make an investment that made sense for the future of our company. So making more specialty products that were bio-based and biodegradable. And this was the first drive. The second drive was we could couple that with a very strong social message of re-employment people. So I think it was a business-driven social project. Let's call it in that way.
Okay. There's a question from the well-known author Anonymous to both of you, which is, what is the role of IT systems in restructuring? Do you have to make extra investment? Mr. Marshall?
Well, that really, I would just add one thing I forgot to say about replacing people. The first line of attack in companies here in the Gulf, we should be looking at the contractors. Instead of outsourcing, we used to do a lot. Then in order to absorb, especially some of the local workforce, probably look at bringing some of these jobs home in the company itself and replacing it with your local people. That's very important. But it's not always the case because some of these jobs are specialized. But you try that first. But IT system, yes, I would have loved to have an IT SAP system before we did shared services. But when you don't have money, you don't have money. Americans say no money, no honey. So, we have to do it without the IT system. We are going back now slowly, adding the IT system, but because of our financial situation and cash situation, we have to pay the banks first. We can't be luxury and buy an IT system for 50 million reals when the bank interest payment is due. So interest take priority. We have to pay. So yes, we're going back, but yeah, I agree. In SABIC case, for example, I started shared services back in 2002. We have fully IT system before we started shared services. But that's not the case, just didn't have the cash.
Okay.
Yes,
Daniel?
definitely. The IT investment was underpinning every other investment. We had no supply chain integrated when we started. So there was a complete sales and operational planning process, to be set up. And there was obviously the IT to support it. Then there was a link to manufacturing. Then there was a link to a new SAP version that helped us to do the final financial reconciliation on a monthly basis. And then you start, having your machine rolling. But definitely it takes time, investment, and a lot of effort.
Okay. Mr. Morris, in your article, I think you say, if you've got to cut workforce, go for 20 to 30%. And you said something very similar. Why?
Yep.
What's special about 25%?
Honestly, there is nothing special, but in personal experience of 4 restructurings I showed, it is so painful exercise. It just shakes the organization from the roots. That if it's not that significant, just don't do it. Let attrition, you stop hiring, the usual stuff. Because it's such painful. So, but the 20 to 30% give you the mass of money. When you look at any company payroll, and I don't mean direct salary, I mean the burden, what we call it, which is salary plus all the benefit.
Yeah.
You will find out, save in a company of that size, of magnitude, you're going to save almost 400 to 500 million real a year. That's big buck.
Yeah.
So this is where the number comes in, and it's just also my experience with others, and others I'm sure who have done these things, is organizations who don't go through restructuring for 10 or so years, they tend to accumulate that kind of fat. Companies, by the way, it's just like us. If we eat a lot and sit, we gain weight, So rather than going to a stomach and doing the sleeving job of cutting someone's stomach, it's better to control it from the beginning and not go so much. So that's really where it comes from. No magic things. And of course, the consultant will help you sometime with this number too.
Right. But for example, if a company could identify, a 12% overcapacity of staffing level, it might not be worth going through all the pain, depending on the circumstances. Is that what you mean? Or?
Yeah, well, I mean, a smaller number can be, like I said, done by stop hiring and let attrition takes care of it. Because natural attrition, a lot of companies will be 5%, sometimes 6%. So it can get you to there by 2 years or so.
Yeah.
So this is kind of my point. But really, it's easy. When you go to an organization and you found so many number in the top, CEO, suite, or executive, or like 20, when the other company similar to you has 6 or 7, then there is a problem. There is too many chiefs and no Indians.
Right.
So that's where the action needs to go.
Yeah. Okay. Daniele,
Yes.
this question, I'll start with you. Do you have any advice for the consultants in the room? They're feeling very lonely, very upset.
We all do.
Some of them sit around too much, probably, as well. Did you use consultants extensively in your redevelopment?
Yes,
what
I did.
would you advise?
Yes, we did. We used it at the beginning, particularly on the organization. We thought that the challenge of changing from an asset-driven organization into a market-driven was really a big step for us. So we had to take some advices. And to be honest, my experience was positive. I don't have any advice to give particularly, but the only advice, if you really want, is to leave the feeling that the organization can work without them. And I think a lot of consultancy firms does that. They are not, in inverted comma, as invasive as in the past decade, where they used to come and then they never go away because you don't know how to do it yourself. Now they tend to come in, teach you how to do, and then leave you to develop the rest and step back when it's finished. And I think if they continue to master this feeling, I think is the best way to work with companies. But we did at the beginning use them, yes.
Yes.
I would say a few things. One, and I have a lot of consultant friends in the room, so I cannot be so much. One, don't overstay your welcome. People get tired, fatigue. We call it consultant fatigue. I'm sure a lot of people who work with consultants understand this term called consultant fatigue. So don't overstay your welcome. Two, be down to earth. Don't go of 10,000 feet and say we do this and do this, because we at the ground level don't see up 10,000 feet. So be there, things. And the last thing is really also try not to be a blame on certain people in the organization, because you'll find in any organization, some members are cooperative, some members are not so cooperative, and they maybe have their good reason. So sometimes consultants keep running to the boss saying, this guy, this guy, this guy. I think before you do that, it's good to come to the boss and say something. Don't get me wrong. But before you do that, you need to spend the effort and sweat trying to bring that person on board. If it doesn't work, then yeah, sure. But don't do. So 3 little things, I think, will go a long way.
Okay. So, Daniele,
Yes.
you talked about your timeline to be profitable and paying back. Were you also as focused on the cash in the company as Mr. Morichet is talking about?
Every single step of the restructuring requires cash, obviously. So we had to ask our shareholder and convince them that the restructuring was worthwhile, and clearly convince them to put an amount of cash in it. You've seen a number which is about $1 billion. Clearly, it's not all in new products, but it's also sustaining capex and other things, And the amount of cash that went into the growth was about 60-70%, because that's what you need to do when you really have to reestablish that growth. And as I say, the most important part is to keep them involved and to keep them confident that the results are coming. And I have to say, this was not an easy task in 2013, because that was the first year, and the first year was not we didn't have really in the pipeline any project that could convince them that things were going in the right direction. So it was tough, and we found shareholders that were extremely trustful on us, and thanks to that, we are here.
Yes.
Well, I think my colleague to my left is a lucky one, because he has parents. In Tasnic case, we have no parents. You know damn well as a child, no matter what your parents do, they're not going to let you drown. They're going to come and rescue you at the last minute. But when you don't have the parents, you're an orphan, you're going to sink. So,
but they gave us a timeline.
I know.
They told us, okay,
yeah.
either you do it in this amount of time, and then you become self-sustainable, like we are today, or,
But when you have not that, when you just sink, That's it. But really, you have to be careful with consultant also. I was going to say, you should, if I do again some of these, I will say, okay, you get paid from the saving that Fawaz al-Fawaz will sign on, or whoever you have your Fawaz. So you pay from saving. And I'm going to say, I'm proud, not proud of it, but we're one of the few companies, even the consultant, we did not pay them in time. We just scheduled them over a year behind their scheduled payment. And I think some of the room, they know.
Probably our last question. I'd better check how we're doing on timing at the back there. But your PMO, your body of independent thinkers, really, who are overseeing this process, do you dissolve that group with time, or does it stay there forever?
Absolutely gone. Absolutely
It's gone.
gone. Almost gone with the consultant. Yes, no. That's the danger also. When you build these things, never let them stay beyond their useful life.
Right.
When the thing's done, they should be absorbed in the organization. Normally, they are direct employee, your own employees normally, with few maybe from out, but no, you absorb them in the organization and they are gone, basically.
Daniele, did you have a similar group?
Well, the same, the leadership team that we have today has no one person that did the same job before the start of the turnaround. So each of them are either moving somewhere else, leaving the company, or new coming from the organization, newcomers from inside. So we really had a complete change in roles and in people. And I think this was important because as I said, you have to identify where the change management agents are and give them the full responsibility to carry out the change.
True.